What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bottom Sprocket. We are back after a little bit of a hiatus in November. We're putting a bunch of episodes in the barrel so that you have some fun listening for when you're goofing off at work or, sitting around doing something more productive with your time. So today we're kind of following up from a topic from last time where we went over all of the new bikes for 2024. We hinted at it at the end with Josh talking about how this is such a great time to get on a motorcycle for the first time. So today I figured it would be fun for us to talk about how we would do things differently and what we would recommend for first-time riders in 2024, because it can almost be daunting with how many choices there are out there. And I feel like all three of us would completely rewrite our first couple of years on a motorcycle if we could go back in time. So with that being said, let's dive on into getting started in 2024. All right, Whitney, you want to start us off with what you would do for your 2024 Whitney starter guide to motorcycle?
I wish I would have started on a mini supermoto. Like all the bad... I think that's one of the coolest styles of riding I've seen, because it's kind of incorporating all... It's fast, you gotta be good, you look kind of goofy, you're a total squid. That's what I wish I would have.
Now, when you say mini supermoto, you're talking about like a PW90 or like a little 150 with supermoto wheels. That
people fucking dump $3,000 worth of suspension into. And there's something about it that I like that people, it's also probably because I've been a part of this Facebook group for years now, because I was indoctrinated into it a few years ago. But seeing what people put into converting them is super cool, and always just trying to milk every aspect out of making sure you're recording.
I'm making sure I'm recording.
Milking every aspect out of it. It just seems like the pinnacle of fun.
Right.
And technique, and not having to start on the highway, do brain surgery, become a different person to try to reverse engineer your riding style as a commuter.
Especially with one of those little bikes, if you can have somebody watch what you're doing and they can tweak what your mistakes. Like if you take one of those little bikes to
track,
track day, and you can just do maybe at a kart track even, and just really start to feel what those limits are. It would be really, really fun. And it's so low stakes, because even tapped out, you're not going that fast.
It just looks like so much fun. So
you did
ride on track. Is that what you're looking to do with it? Go take it to the track?
Yeah.
But even the toy, it's a pit bike. So even just around the neighborhood or going
just
down
dragging
to a
me,
lot.
going down your, that to me is how I put. Oh, there goes Whitney. She's in full leathers. What? Okay, weird. That's how I would
going to the mailbox like this.
It's like a dream come true. Just being a freak.
And you can get into them for nothing.
Yes.
And then you can spend all of that money that you saved upgrading it, like you said.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like a project bike too. Pit bikes, they're doing big bore kits. They're doing everything on them. And up here, I've noticed way more culture around them than I noticed in Texas, because we have big groups that will rove around on streets and do takeovers and stuff like that. And they're all on fully built. Well, they all want to be on a pit bike, and half of them are on those Coleman shitty woods because they can't quite afford the pit bike.
With no suspension and the lawnmower motor.
Yeah, no, you don't need it.
I really want to get sumo wheels for my Hawk 250. I want to get supermoto wheels for the Hawk.
You always got to bring up the Hawk 250, really.
I mean, it would be a great little option.
Do you think so?
I think so, yeah.
All right.
I mean,
you could put a round tire on the back and a dirt tire up front. You could do both things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 17 horsepower, so it's teensy tiny, and you can upgrade it all you want.
Yeah.
I think they're fun, and they're dirt cheap.
All right.
Great little pit bike option. I would not probably recommend getting one as a beginner. I would get one because I've spent some time on it. We'll talk about that more in a second. But Josh, how about you? What would you do for your beginner guide in 2024?
Well, I think it has a little to do with your circumstances, right? I'm 29 now. I can afford motorcycle payments. When I started riding, I could not afford a motorcycle payment or get financing. So I went project bike, cash bike. I think I paid $2,000 for a really crusty piece of shit SV650 that never wanted to run and was a real pain in the ass. So that's like kind of the first consideration. If you can go get a new bike, shoot. There's so many options for you. And I think anything in that 400cc, 450cc range is such a good beginner bike now. They're decently priced, like the CF Moto's 450 SS. I was talking to a kid. He was like 18 years old or something. He was trying to get into like some videography work and stuff. Mm-hmm. And we connected over videography, and then he was like, "Oh, also, I'm interested in motorcycles." I was like, "Whoa, buddy, you have no idea." And he was telling me that that's what he was interested in. It was a 450 SS. I was like, "That's so cool!" Like, and what a great decision. But yeah, I'd probably go that route. Now, if I couldn't, I think there's still a lot of options to go project bike route. Mm-hmm. SV650 is still a good option if you can find it. Like, I still have my second gen. I would still recommend that to a rider. I think it's a little faster than I would even recommend nowadays. Mm-hmm. It was positioned to me as like, this is as fast as a beginner bike as you can buy. And I was like, well, perfect. That's exactly what I should do. And now I've had too many oh shit moments, or when I was first riding, it was a lot faster than I kind of expected. And yeah, kind of too many oh shit moments to really be safe and reflect back on it and be like, that was a good decision. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I think there's a good used dual sport would be a great way to get into it. CRF 250 or something like that. 300s would be great. Yeah, I'd slow it down a little bit from where I started with a 65 horsepower naked bike, and yeah, then it would just be on what I could afford.
And what would you choose if you were going to start over? This is your first day of riding. What do you want to get now? Knowing what you know now, what's the bike you get?
M209 SP.
That would be you starting over in 2024 is getting the MT09 SP instead of the XSR 900.
Oh,
yeah,
sexy bike, quick shifter.
God damn.
Well,
I feel like somebody from the great beyond is trying to communicate to us.
Yep.
Yeah, write this down. Write the Morse code down.
It actually will start blinking in like Morse.
That is terrifying. Your house is haunted.
Click, click, click. It's weird. My light behind the cameras is weird. It gets hot and it does weird stuff. Whatever. I bought it for like $20 on Amazon. But Josh still hasn't told us what bike he would get.
Yeah, I'd go with I'd probably go with that the Aprilia that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
That 456 or 457 or whatever it is, 450-ish cc's.
Yeah.
If the price is right, I can finance it now. That's a beautiful bike. I love the RS660. Love it. But like, I think that's a little bit much to start on.
Yeah.
I think I'd go with that bike actually.
Yeah, the RS457 is really, really cool. I cannot wait to get my hands on one. I'm not going to fit on it, but I still want to ride it. It's so cool to see Aprilia, because you think of Ducati and Aprilia almost as the same. God damn it, with the light. What the fuck is your problem, dude? Jesus Christ.
Time for another $20 light.
Yeah. It's getting really hot. I think it's just overheating. So you think of Ducati and Aprilia, and you think of these like super high-end manufacturers, and seeing them actually bring a proper beginner bike out is really cool. I don't think Ducati will ever bring a proper beginner bike out.
That would be sick.
That's just not what they do.
No.
They kind of have one in the 62, the Scrambler 62, but not like a baby Panigale or anything like that, which would be really cool. But I think that Ducati would rather commit Harikiri than do that. They'd just be like,
well, I wonder how many beginners are starting on a Ducati, like older riders. How many of them have dropped?
Oh, I bet it's happening. There's so many people that start off on any bike. They're like, it doesn't matter. You just got to learn how to ride it.
I see so many Panigales going with like 900 miles on them though. Like some guy gets it because
ZH2 with 18 miles used.
Yeah, they're just like, I don't have time to ride it anymore. No, you got scared. That's what happened. I got you. Or they got their service bill back and they were like, Jesus Christ. Because those guys take their Ducatis to the dealer. But if I was going to start over, I would do DRZ 400 SM.
That makes sense.
I would start on a DRZ 400. They're huge for like a beginner guy. It would be really great to get on because it's roomy, it's big, it handles great, and it can do the highway. Not great, but it can do it. It's light, and who cares if you drop the thing? If you drop it, you can get DRZ parts on Amazon for $10. You can get a whole new set of plastics for $200. Like, try finding a full, Did
you ever drop your bike as a beginner?
No, I never dropped mine.
Neither did I. I always think that's a funny factor.
I dropped my bike so much.
Yeah,
I was like, will it go over a curb? No.
Oh, see, well, you were doing funny Josh stuff with it. I never dropped it until I owed a lot of money on it. That's when I got absolutely scared and was like, oh, then,
That was the BMW, right? You dropped the BMW?
Second day I owned it. It's so so expensive, so fancy.
And you mangled the handlebars, right?
Oh, yeah, squishied.
But I think the DRZ is a overlooked option. Fuck me, running lights. Stop it.
It's going to give up here in a second.
Just crank that ISO.
Yeah, I guess Jake's got a 2.8 on there. We can try to see each other.
I think it's an often overlooked bike because it's ugly. You can't make a DRZ look good. They're old looking, they're ugly, they're not fancy. Mm-hmm. But when you get past that, you're dealing with a great bike that's got fully adjustable suspension, good brakes.
No beginner is looking past that, though. Think about that.
True.
As like a seasoned rider, you're like, oh, okay, this is what I need to look for. But every beginner's like, that's ugly.
See, that's the thing is I'm looking at it with this like completely analytical lens where I'm like, oh, I want all of these options because I can grow into it. You know what I mean?
Did you think that when you first got a bike?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
But this is me knowing what I know now.
Sure.
So, like, I would recommend that because it has all these options.
That's why we're doing the podcast, not a beginner.
Now listen to us, or else.
Or else, yeah. You're not allowed to come back. But the cool thing about the DRZ for me is you could also go off-road with it if you wanted. So you could take it to a racetrack. You could take it off-road. It kind of sucks off-road with the SM, but it's doable. I got to learn so much on mine. And had I started on that, I think my trajectory for motorcycling would have accelerated so much. Like you on your little pit bike supermoto. I think I would have just gotten so much better, so much faster.
Yeah, you're not wasting a lot of time. Sure, you're commuting and putting around, but it's like the fun stuff is in the diversity of riding.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I would stress here is if you can, get a motorcycle that can do more than one thing. Mm-hmm. I really wouldn't recommend starting on a cruiser because cruisers can only go on the street. You can kind of take them to a track, but they're no fun there.
Unless you're like an older beginner.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing you want. Mm-hmm. Then it's like, okay, well, do the thing that you're going to do, no matter what. They're not listening to us.
So, in the sense of people... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, the cruisers, I don't think teach you the same things.
No.
It's a little more simple. One thing I wanted to say about the DRZ, though, for beginners, is that if you're my height, that's a lot harder to learn on than if you're your height. Because I'm 6'8" or 5'8" or something, and you're what, 6'3", something like that. Yeah, it's hard to find a motorcycle
wishes he was 6'8".
Woo! At 5'8", like that's tough. It takes some doing to learn to put only one foot down and be prepared when you come to stops and to learn the hills and what the angle the road is on and everything, that definitely will take some learning if you're not over 6 feet tall.
True. Yeah, that is the one drawback. But you also have now KLX 300 SM, which is not nearly as good as a DRZ, but it's all of the fun of a DRZ in a bike that's approachable for people who are shorter.
And terrifying on the highway.
It's not great on the highway, yeah.
See, that was a big reason why I got a bigger bike, is because if you don't feel safe on the highway,
you're not going to have fun.
You're not going to have any fun, and that can be a bad mistake, which is why I got a bigger bike.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense, let's talk about some stuff we would definitely not recommend to a beginner. Because you're talking about getting a bigger bike on the highway, but
I felt safer though. But I also wasn't afraid about dropping it or how much it weighed.
You also were a little bit older when you got that to start.
I was also in my 20s.
Like 18, yeah.
So, but that's one of the reasons why you can go a million different ways.
I think one thing that both Josh and I would recommend you not do, and Whitney as well, because you also did this, do not get a project bike to start.
I have luckily talked out a lot of people. I'm like, no, stop. What's your credit score? Go do that.
Yeah. So you started on the SV. Give us some horror stories of the SV, because I remember you coming to the office and you're like, yeah, I had to pull the carburetors out again. My fuel filter's full of
He always smelled like
and
fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that first year I cleaned the carburetors a half dozen times, I feel like. And that's with those bikes, they've traded hands so many times. People have done like quick hack jobs just to get back on the road, which isn't quality repair. Like if it's one of those bikes that's been passed around a lot, you'll never get to all of the problems, because it's not one problem that you have to fix. It's a lot of problems that you have to fix. Some of that's really fun. Like, I love working on bikes. I know you like working on bikes a lot as well. But if that holds you back from riding, then it's taken away from like what we're talking about doing, getting on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
If you want to learn to tinker, sure, go ahead and get a motorcycle and put it in your garage on a stand and just take things apart and put them back together. But if you want to ride a motorcycle, yeah, getting one of those really cheap bikes that's changed owners so many times and
things
are falling off of it.
For older people who are restoing them. Like that's who bought my GS 750. He was like, "Oh no, I don't care. I'm gutting this bike and starting over," because he had all the original parts. That's who those Frankenstein bikes are for.
And you started, your very first bike was the 160, CB 160, and you had to rebuild that whole engine,
Had to rebuild the engine straight out the gate. Like, blew all my money on buying it. Oh, shit. That was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. I remember trying to kickstart it in my garage, and I had, like, rented the garage just for the bike, and the guy kick-started it the night before, but now it's not starting. So then I had to push start it, and then it ran like a dumb idiot. I went like 4 miles away. And then I was stranded. And then I didn't have any tools. I lived in an apartment. It was one thing after the other, and then I brought it to a local mechanic, and they were like, well, we're ordering OEM points from Honda, from Japan. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And it sat there forever. I had to break it out. Never rode. And they're not for riding. That's the funny thing. It's like those project bikes are to work on and learn and restore and sell or flip or just collect. A lot of people just collect them.
Yeah.
They're not for riding.
No.
Why would you daily it's the same thing with cars. Why are you going to daily a 1965 motorcycle?
Right.
Because you're dumb in 19.
Yeah.
Which was me.
I think...
Yep.
So I've got 2 project bikes. One of them is almost done, and one of them is done. One of them runs. It would run if I put a freaking battery in it, but the battery from my Hawk went into the other project bike, the CBR 600 F4i. And the F4i... Zorro's getting some lap
That's Zorro?
Got a guess.
So the CBR 600 F4i I've got, I bought it for $1,100 because it didn't run, didn't have a title. I don't think bonding a bike is a big deal. I really don't. It does affect whether or not a dealership will buy it, but you just sell it secondhand, and maybe it affects the price, maybe it doesn't. I really don't see bonding a title as a big deal. But it sounded really great because it was like, oh, it just needs a new fuel pump. It did not just need a new fuel pump. I rebuilt the fuel pump. I put in new relays. I had to jump the tip over sensor. I had to clean the injectors. I had to take apart the entire fuel rail. The amount of work that went into that, it was, I will say this, it was easy labor because I knew kind of what I was doing. And I had a buddy who could help me out. But if you're just getting started and you're like, oh, it needs a new fuel pump. It's 6 bolts on the bottom of the gas tank. Why doesn't it still run? Oh, because it might be the spark plugs. It might be that the injectors are clogged, blah, blah, blah. My rear brake still doesn't work on it. My rear brake is currently torn apart. Project bikes are not a great place to start just because they're all disasters.
Well, that at least, it's the points. No, it's not. It's the wiring harness. No, it's not. It's the spark plug. No, it's not. It's the charging system. No, it's not. It's like you start doing that whole thing, and then you're down a rabbit hole, and you're out $1,500 and. But
the reality is it could be all of them, or it could be none of them. Yeah. The problem with the F4i, the fuel circuit, the fuel starting circuit touches so many different parts of the bike. It's at the tail, it's at the nose, it's at the bottom, it's at the gas tank. The wires go everywhere, and you have to check so many little connectors and stuff.
Which is fine when you're not running a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And you're retired, and there's nothing going on, and you're bored in the Midwest, and it's winter. That sounds great. But when you're busy, or you got stuff to do,
or you just want to go ride your motorcycle.
That's why I bought 3 brand new bikes. I had vintage bike blue balls for like 6 years, 7 years.
But I will say, one of the best experiences with this CBR was when I took it on 20 and I tapped it out in 3rd gear, and I was going like 100 miles an hour, and I was just like, yes!
That must have felt so good. It is very gratifying work. I mean, it's gratifying.
Yeah.
But
it's not a good place to start.
Don't start there. Don't start there, and don't trust the people you're buying it from. I wish somebody, a friend, anybody would have come with me while this guy was dropping off this CB Project Frankenstein monster flaming pile of trash, and like said, hey, let's back this up.
Maybe no. Yeah.
I wish that.
And that's hard to like encourage people to do, but man, I know we all have like those friends who have helped us immensely in it. That help is so hard to find because the shops in your town, they do not want your project bike. They'll come in and they'll say, yeah, sure, we'll change the fuel pump. And then we'll call you when the fuel pump has been changed, and we'll say, yeah, it still doesn't run. Come pick it up and pay us. They do not want to diagnose things. They do not want to help you. But finding somebody who's a little older, maybe who's been doing it for a while and can help you know where to start is invaluable. But that is not fun to deal with when you just want to ride a motorcycle.
No. And I mean, you might think, oh, well, I'll just Google it. Okay, you're gonna fall down so many rabbit holes online. Being online is one of the worst places to look for, because there's so much information, and 2 people can listen to the same motorcycle that has a knock, and one will be like it's rod knock, one of them's gonna be like it's valve chatter.
Shout out to my friend Little Chris's dad. I would bring the bike to him, which was an hour north of me. And he was a guy that had like a bunch of early 80s Ducati racing gear everywhere, and like rotting Ducatis all over the place, vintage snowmobiles. He never said a word. Like, this dude knew a lot.
Yeah.
And he'd look at the bike, and then he'd like poke it, and then it would start, and then he'd ride off into the sunset. And I'm like, Little Chris and I would look at each other and be like, what just happened? we tried this and that and this and this and that, but I don't know. He knew what button to just like flick.
Yeah.
Those are unicorn people. You should keep them in your life. Learn to be their best friend. Give them offerings. Give them beans and stardust and whatever. But like, those are rare people.
Yeah. And they're very hard to find. And
they also don't want to fuck with you. They're
no.
like, no, get away. Get away.
If you bring them their project, they're like, oh, why?
He bought it from me. But you know what he gave me?
Huh.
$500.
Yep.
Because I couldn't get any more out. He was like,
because he knows.
$500.
He knows what it's worth.
And I knew that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, here you go.
If we're still going around with the things to tell people not to do, gotta stress, do not start on a 600cc super sport motorcycle. Gotta do it. Said it before. It's just dangerous. We've talked about this before. A lot of people die on motorcycles. If you're looking at starting to ride motorcycles, a lot of people die on them. Don't let it be you, okay? And start on a 600cc motorcycle is a quick way to make that happen.
Start on a trike.
They can go very fast and you can't.
I think one of you have there are so many other better options for starting on a super sport style bike. There's the 450 SS, which admittedly the ergonomics are not as committed, but you're not going to know the difference as a beginner. You have the Ninja 400. You
It's
have
going to be such a fun edit to do.
You're just going to have to go from one camera to the next. I apologize, Whitney. This light will not be here next time. You've got the RS 457 coming out. You've got the Duke, the RC 390. There are so many great options in the sport bike space. Admittedly, you're not going to get the sound that people want. People want that inline four sound. And I wouldn't really recommend getting the ZX4RR. You're going to get it and it's like 70 horsepower, but it's way up at the top. You got to rev the hell out of it. So you could theoretically be responsible with it. You're not gonna.
It's expensive too.
It's also really expensive.
So expensive.
But with the options in the 400 class, you can get great looking, great sounding motorcycles for way cheaper, and you're not going to have to pay that insurance rate.
I wish the 401s, the Spark Peeling and the V Peeling, were around. That was so, oh my God, I think I'd be a different person.
Those were such great bikes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do they still make them? Or did they cancel a whole Spark?
I thought they just
line?
canceled the 701s.
I think you're right. I think they got rid of the 701s, which is a shame. Those are cool.
No, we still have the 401s.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because the 401, the Vitpillin 401 is such an overlooked little sport bike because it's so light, it's so nimble, great suspension, and a great little motor.
And my friend ran over my bike and it was fine. I parked behind him. He had like this big giant pickup truck and he knocked it over and kind of like ran over it a little bit, but not very much. He was freaking out. Oh my God, I looked at it, I was like, dude, nothing's wrong with it. Besides this damn light. Nothing.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I believe it because like the fairings on a super sport, they're gonna get messed up when it falls over.
They're gonna crack.
Bikes take it a little bit better.
Which is why I think you get like the CF Moto, where the plastics are so cheap because you can just get a new set for not $1,000. It's just it doesn't there with as many options. It doesn't make sense to get a huge bike too. Like the getting over the fear of getting on the highway now. There's so many bikes in the 50 horsepower class which are light and have enough power for the highway that you don't really need to be like, oh, I got to get the 900 now.
Right.
Admittedly, a 900 would absolutely stomp any of these 50 horsepower bikes.
Yep.
But it's not an imperative anymore. Whereas like on a 250, you would struggle on the highway on a 250 for sure. So
right.
It's just take it slow. I think that's the biggest thing that I would recommend is take it slow at the beginning, right? Because it's
go get a dirt bike too.
Go get a dirt bike.
Way to go about it.
Yeah.
Little trail bike. 250s are quick. Like 250s are quick. 450s are way too fast. Don't do that. But like little trail bike, 230, something like that. That's what I got my dad for his very first motorcycle. He learned how to ride. And we were thinking, okay, well, he wanted a TW200 because that's what I let him learn on. But then he was like, well, I'm never going to ride on the street. I was like, well, then you don't need a dual sport. Like, that's silly. So we got a CRF 230F, a little bit older, $2,000. The dude, luckily, took great care of it. But like, I've been doing this enough that I can go and look at a bike and decide whether it's worthy buying used or not. Something like that, even like 110 range, something that fits your stature. That's a great way to learn how motorcycles work, how clutches work, how they lean, all of that stuff that will make it a lot easier to learn to ride on the street.
So we have talked a lot about new bikes, and we've talked about how to not get a project bike. But there is kind of that intermediate where you can get, like a $3,000 used bike online. If you were going to just like pull one bike out of the air that you were going to look for online, which bike would you recommend for somebody? Because I think I know which one I would get.
Which one would you get?
I think I would get a CB600F. The CB600F is the Little Hornet. So it's basically everything that I love about the 919, but with a 600cc motor that is detuned. It's a lot more mellow than your average 600. It's tuned for the street, it's comfy, and they can be had cheap. They're really cheap bikes. And it's a Honda. It's a Honda Inline 4. You can't kill one. I think it would
I was like, it's a fast bike. That's how much horsepower is that making?
It's like 70, I think. Let me pull it up. It's quick, but it's not that quick.
Yeah. And that's as much as I think we'd want to recommend to a beginner for sure. Good option. And they're reliable. Yeah. But you got to be really careful because I think in that same class, you'll get some that are like clapped out and you'll get some that are well taken care of.
Wow. Apparently they claim around 100 horsepower. No way. No way is this thing putting down 100 horsepower. I will eat my hat if they're making 100 brake. That's no way. I'd say they're probably putting down about 70 to the wheel, realistically. But I still think it's a great option because it's a Honda. I still think it's a great option because it's a Honda. It's really, really, really reliable. And aside from the tank, if you damage it, you can kind of put anything on it. The tanks are hard to come by, but I think it's a decent option.
What you got, Whitney?
God, I don't know.
Is there nothing speaks to you out in the ether? Did you start on a R9T again?
The things I'd start out on, I don't think you can find used. Like the XSR 700.
Right. You can find a couple of XSR 700s.
Maybe you could find that used, because I'm thinking used bikes. I'm like, we'll get like a late 70s Honda. And I'm like, okay, no. I'm jumping way too far back or way too recent. It's hard for me to think of like a 10-year-old,
So would you do like an MT-07 then? Or do you need it to be the XSR?
I need it to be the XSR. I think the MT-07 is super ugly.
And especially the FZ07 era bikes.
That's also
really
extremely ugly.
Yeah, right.
Josh, is it SV650 for you?
No. CRF 250L.
CRF 250L.
Or WR250. Yeah, I'd go dual sport for sure.
TW? Those are cute. I don't know if you can find those used though.
I feel like people who have TW
like XT250. It's another dual sport that Yamaha does. They're not as fast. So if you're really interested, I've gotten enough of that like I know that I'm okay. Going fast off road on a slow bike is really fun.
Yes.
Going fast without a lot of skill on the road on a fast bike is very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I would I probably wouldn't have been able to convince myself when I started riding that was the right bike for me. But that's what I'd do. I'd go with a dual sport, a 250 that's detuned, not like a competition motocross 250 bike or something like a YZ250 or anything, but like a dual sport 250, even maybe a little less displacement. That's what I'd go with, and I'd go ride off road a lot.
Mm-hmm. Any final pieces of advice? Any like general pieces of advice? I think for me, if I was going to recommend somebody's getting into motorcycling, just park an extra $1,500. Just you have your motorcycle fund, you've got some money set aside for gear, just park $1,500 in an account, just do like a long-term CD or something, and then 6 months later when the CD's done and you get that money back, you're going to realize, oh shoot, I need to go get this bike maintained. I need to spend some money on new tires. I got to spend some money on new gloves. Just park a little bit of cash, set it aside. You're gonna go through it. I promise.
In today's economy, though, nobody can park any cash.
That's difficult.
Yeah. Wishful thinking.
I mean,
but yes, yeah.
If you can set aside even $600, even $500,
just something.
Yeah.
Just open a credit card. You'll be good.
Cash advance.
This is my new motorcycle credit card.
What about you? Any little final pieces of advice? Some things that people might not think of.
As a commuter rider, I think it was important to find something that did have enough highway speed, because I've noticed that this is too small. I can't get up to where I need to go. And in Texas, it's different, where the toll road is 80 miles an hour.
Yep.
Speed limit, that's a lot different. So it's like, sure, start less CCs, but also you got to find the sweet spot and get something that can carry you depending on the type of riding you're doing.
That has maybe a little bit of overhead where you're not going to be tapping it out to go keeping up with traffic speed.
Yeah.
Or leave you a little bit of extra oomph to pass somebody if you need it.
Because that's important.
Yeah. And it's definitely more important in a place where you have high-speed roads like Texas.
Yes.
Because you said the toll road's 80 miles an hour. I don't remember the last time I've gone only 80 on that toll road.
Yep.
Josh, any final pieces of advice?
I'd encourage folks to kind of like learn to love the maintenance aspects of it as well. I think especially since we're encouraging you not to get a project bike where you're going to be forced to learn that kind of stuff, knowing how to like take apart full handlebar, throttle tube, all of your clusters, knowing how to change your chain, doing all your oil, cleaning air filters, like it will give you more options down the road to be able to diagnose bike, get into working on bikes. And I know a lot of riders who never have done any of that stuff. And we see a lot of them at work. Come in, please do my service. I'm going to take it back out and ride it. That's cool. But like, I love the freedom and options that it gives you when you put your hands on motorcycles and you really kind of know how to do what you want to do. But if you're buying a decent bike, then you're not forced into it, and it could easily be overlooked.
Yeah.
But knowing like, what does it feel like when you've got like a rusty chain that doesn't want to turn, and knowing how to change your sprocket so you can re-gear it, and doing things like that are relatively simple. I think those are cool things to try and remember and not just let yourself slip on.
Right. And I think that's a good note to end on. Any final parting thoughts, y'all?
Yeah, well, if you're still considering whether or not you should get a motorcycle, do it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely do it.
Do get yourself a motorcycle. You have so many great choices, and for the love of God, don't get a project bike. Oh my God. I've honestly spent more on the CBR than I did to buy it already.
Oof.
Yeah. Well, I did put $500 tires on there, so that doesn't help. But still,
your camera's gonna die. Hurry.
That's it. On that note, remember, like and subscribe so that we can get to 1,000 here on this channel. If you want to just listen, we've got options wherever you listen to podcasts. So your options are out there, and we will be back next time with an episode. I don't know what we'll be doing. We'll all sit and think about it. But
it'll be good.
It'll be good. I guarantee you it'll at least be as good as this time, and the flickering light will have been solved. Much to Whitney's, well, no, not to chagrin, but you'll be happy to not have to deal with a flickering light. We'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later. A little bit rough, that one, but...
That's okay. I got the DEFCON text from Lucas, so I gotta skedaddle.
Yeah, I saw you switching out.
I only check it if it's an emergency.